hard, whining, Lord, whining.
WEFM, the fresh sound.
Activated Mornings on WEFM 99.9 is on now.
Listen,
You can't help it,
I cannot help it. And I feel like you do it on purpose so that I would move.
Welcome back to Vincent and the Grenadines. The time is 8:12, soon to be 8:13, and we have with us, well, you're listening, of course, to Ari and Christal, and you have with us Atiba Edwards, who is the president and CEO of the Brooklyn Children's Museum. Good morning, Mr. Edwards.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be here, back home.
How long have you been back home?
Huh?
How long have you been back home?
The last time was I came down in 2010 for my grandmother's funeral.
Ooh.
And then now I'm back there almost 15 years. 2009 or 10, I don't remember. But yeah, so now my parents down here, and I figured my dad's birthday is Thursday. So a couple of us came down. Yeah. This Thursday coming up, the 4th. Yeah, the 4th.
Happy birthday in advance,
4th of
Pops.
July. No, April. Every time I hear the 4th, I align July. I don't know why. Every time I hear the 4th.
It's time to jump.
American marketing, terrible.
Right?
Terrible. It's working clearly for you. Terrible. My goodness me. But it's a pleasure to have you in and have you back to St. Vincent. How is the air? How is it going so far?
It's great. It is fantastic. I landed yesterday. I had a bitter lemon, fruit cocktail, and ginger ale. I'm trying to get a Malby to round out the high room beverages.
Hannah, you serious? All at once? Because that sounds like a rundown.
I finished one, then I had a red belly. Then I finished the next. Then I had another red belly. And then I finished the last two while watching basketball. So
that's haven't been home in a while like this.
Right. Indulgence. It's indulgence. It's remembering all the gems of the jewel of the Caribbean.
Come on.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, if you didn't know, Atiba Edwards, could I say Atiba?
You can say Atiba, yes. That's
okay,
totally fine.
Cool. Just making sure I don't get in trouble after. He is the president and CEO at the Brooklyn Children's Museum in New York. And it's worth mentioning that he's the first Black man, of course, by extension, first Vincentian too, to be their president in their 125 years history. How does that feel?
It feels great. It feels fantastic. You know, I definitely always pause to pay tribute. There was a Black director, Lloyd Hezekiah, who's also, I think he was from St. Kitts. So having the chance to be the first Black president and CEO of this institution that is rooted in Crown Heights. And Crown Heights is a neighborhood that is predominantly a combination of three cultures. There's a Jewish,
the main one,
African American, and then Caribbean American, West Indian, all overlapping. We are located pretty much at the nexus point. So for many people, when this was released publicly at the end of November, is a big outpouring of love. So I'm excited about it. It is a daunting task, but I know there's a lot of people rooting for me and helping me out in the background.
That's good. That's good.
So could you tell us more about the history of the Children's Museum?
Yeah. It was started in 1899 as the first children's museum in the world. And then the way that we were put into existence, initially there was an organization called Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Sciences. And then eventually they spun out the Brooklyn Children's Museum, the Brooklyn Museum, the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, and Brooklyn Academy of Music, BAM. And initially, when that was spun out was done, we were put in Crown Heights temporarily as they build out the land and the property and get everything set up. And we were supposed to be moved from Crown Heights to the campus where the Brooklyn Museum is and the Botanical Gardens.
I'm glad you call that a campus because that place is huge.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a couple of city blocks big.
Yeah.
But the folks at the time, especially Crown Heights, were predominantly Black and West Indian. They fought the city. They put a big uproar, and they said there's no reason why we can't have this institution stay put here. It's been a benefit here. Why are you taking it from this community to put it somewhere else? So we stayed there ever since. In December 16th this year marks 125 years since we were created.
Wow.
125 years.
That's older than grammar school.
That's older than a lot of things.
Yeah. How does it feel being part of a legacy like that?
It is really inspirational in many ways for me, my family, of course, my home of the island. But what's really come to head a lot more recently is what representation looks like in reality for so many families. I'm usually at the building every Saturday, and I remember I had a mom after the news was. I usually spend most of my time walking the floor, so his mom stops me and like staring at me. I was like, "Oh, what happened in the museum now?" So it's like, "Oh, are you?" I was like, "Yeah, my name's Atiba." Even if they know my name, I always introduce myself. That's how my parents raised me. My name's Atiba. It's like, "Oh, can my son take a photo with you?" I was like, "Of course!" Like, I'm so excited, so he can now see himself doing something else, pursuing something else outside the normal routine, and particularly for I would say Caribbean people in general. When we move up, it's doctor, teacher. You're working for the city. You get a good job with a pension. And now this is given an opportunity for so many people to consider something that didn't exist to them. And for me particularly, I didn't even know so when I started in the museum in 2019, I started as a chief operating officer. And I never knew what that was. I never knew that role existed within a museum, I should say. But now I know it. People have seen me in it. And now as a CEO, people have seen that as well. So it's really a story time in many ways that I know there's a lot of aspirations ahead, but also at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility as well.
Sorry. As you're mentioning representation and you taking a photograph with a young person, a young male, what's your connection to the museum? Apart from the executive arm, what's your connection?
Apart from the check that they get me, growing up, my parents took us there every weekend that was just a normal thing. And I think that was really impactful because going to museums, going to arts and cultural spaces, exploring the city became a normal thing. It wasn't this extraordinary feat where, once a year we get ready to go to the Children's Museum. No, we were there. We spent a lot of time there. My nieces, my nephew spent a lot of time there. I also do some work in the arts. And in 2016, while I was running a middle school, I spent about 12 weeks teaching a teen program that we have there, the role of art and activism through collage. So the museum is something that's near and dear to me, has always been near and dear to me, and has really shaped how I've moved through life in a way I didn't realize until I started there. Like a lot of my curiosity and comfort of exploring spaces and having agency was really started and seeded at the museum from a young age with my parents and my siblings.
All right. So I don't know, the emotion and the full circle. Going there, then becoming a president, and then like impacting that influence on other people.
Yep.
It must be a really great feeling. Let's go back a little bit.
Okay. Take it back.
To the 90s.
Quiet storm on a Tuesday morning.
Hold up. I got an injury. So your academic journey but you studied 3 things. When I looked at it, I thought, what? The combination is just why? So you studied engineering, poetry, and musicology. Tell us about that.
Yeah, they're all in many ways through my own passions, but also the encouragement of others. So I grew up playing video games a lot. To this day, I think it's something really worthwhile because I'm gonna make my quick plug as why video games are important.
You and Ari could probably connect.
Hand-eye coordination.
A lot of guys play video games.
Dexterity, problem solving, team building, critical thinking. All of that's done in day to day. So when you're looking at your kids, like you're back on the game again, you might have to branch out. Like you could only, play Mortal Kombat also many times and get the combinations, but it's still hand-eye coordination, dexterity, critical thinking, problem solving, exploration. That is my quick plug to make sure video games still get played. But I had an Uncle Combo, who passed. He would watch me play. He'd come over almost every Saturday on the weekends. And he's like, if you love them so much, why don't you go figure out how to make one? So that then launched me into my path of engineering, computer science, and then I shifted to do industrial and operations engineering, which is a bit of financial engineering, but also how do we make things better, bigger, easier on people. So Six Sigma, lean manufacturing. And then with musicology, growing up, music was always part of my life. You know, my mom was a singer. My older brother was a DJ for a while. My family is just really rooted in music and instruments, you name it. So I always loved it and, you know, started to just want to understand more. So musicology allowed me to learn a bit through world cultures and how music shows up, was created, and also the instruments were created in a way through really it's resistance when you really hear about it. Resistance, but also how do we celebrate ourselves in our way when at the time the oppressors are holding us back. So that's really the essence of so much music. To this day, we still see it as a throughput. So I wanted to learn a lot more about world music and histories that I know I couldn't do by flying to every island. So while I was at Michigan, that gave me a condensed version of it. And then poetry is one of the most beautiful ways to express yourself when you don't have the words to express yourself. When you want to say something short and poignant and not a big, long speech. And poetry helps to capture so much beauty that exists around us in a snapshot. And I've always loved it. So I went to high school in Bronx Science, took a poetry class there. And then when I went to college, I started exploring it more and ended up as a sophomore in a grad student program. And the professor was just like, what are you doing here? I was like, well, you accepted me. So, and I paid my money to register as cash to check. So it's too late now. But Professor Tillinghast was really exceptional as my poetry professor. And it was a chance for me to workshop with students who were publishing books and really writing manuscripts in a way that I never had that fortune. So the three of them come together was really the things that interested me the most and things I wanted to learn about. And I always tell folks, because I get that question often, it's like, it made sense to me. And that's really what the only thing that mattered at that point in time. And to this day, the only thing that matters, it made sense to me, and it has allowed itself to show up in my life in different ways, in a way that I knew without those studies, I wouldn't have had it.
That's rather interesting. I would never think to put those three things together at all. But it's amazing how they just come together, not eventually, but they come together in your life. And I'm absolutely certain that like poetry and musicology also play a big role in your current position right now. 8:24. I'm not sure if you want to take a break and come back, or let's dive into the Vincentian pass. I think I need some water, boy.
You could take a quick commercial break and get right back into
from that small injury.
All right, so we're here with Atiba, and we're just going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be back shortly.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it's a whole new world out there. Reaching new customers and getting products faster. That's what it's all about. Ocean freight rates are skyrocketing, so don't pay more for slower service. It's time to switch to faster, more reliable air cargo service with SkyMax Cargo. Up to 3 flights weekly to and from the USA, Puerto Rico, and the Caribbean islands. Providing excellent import, export, and e-commerce solutions to put you ahead of the competition. For special low rates on small packages and air cargo, contact SkyMax today. 784-456-5400. Local agents SwiftPack Interprime Cargo. Call 784-456-5400 to book your shipments today.
See me soar in 2024. Be seen wearing the best and latest styles in eyewear from Quartz Optical. Buy one frame and get a second pair for free. Mix and match with your favorite brands. A variety of colors and fresh new styles. Buy one frame and get a second pair absolutely free. Shop today with no cash and pay later. Schedule your free eye exam today at quartzoptical.com. Soar into 2024 with BOGO. Only at Quartz Optical. Value you can see. Conditions apply. Offer valid until January 31st, 2024. See in store for details.
Do you want to feel clean or refreshed after using the bathroom? Whether at home, work, or play? Welcome to My Smart Toilet Seats. All of our products wash your private parts after using the bathroom without the use of your hands. Let's hear what our national table tennis champion, Damian Dublin, has to say.
I tried it and it works. There are 4 options. Simply add an attachment to your existing toilet seat, or choose a non-electric seat, or better, an electric seat that washes and dries you with warm water and air. Lastly, get a complete smart toilet that also flushes itself. What are you waiting for? Get your smart toilet seat today. Be smart, be refreshed, be clean, be a winner like me.
Our smart toilet seat is available throughout St. Vincent at retail outlets with the orange flags. You can call us at 457-1703 or visit our website at justwashit.vc.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the awesome family circus returns. A tropical wonderland awaits you. Mark your calendars for April 19th, April 20th, and April 21st at the Victoria Park. Showtime, 6 p.m. Bring the entire family and enjoy the fun-filled play park daily from 3 p.m. Tickets are available from Pickles, Diamond Grocery, 4 Shells, the Pembroke Service Station, and the Country Mart in Georgetown. The awesome family circus, tropical wonderland. The magic never ends.
Not 10, not 15, 25%. Get 25% discount at Kendra's now on our 100 series UPVC white colonial glider window, complete with insect screen, glazed with gray tempered impact double glass. Perfect for securing your home, whether you're in or out. And get this, buy 20 windows or more and get free delivery up to Georgetown, Windward, and Barrowly, Leeward. Spend $15,000 or more and get a free kitchen sink or a toilet and free delivery. Spend $20,000 or more and get a free window of your choice and free delivery. It's a massive 25% off of 100 series UPVC white colonial glider windows at Kendra's. We got the widest variety and style of windows, doors, and more. For more information, visit our showroom at Caribbean Glass, Kingstown, or our factory at Camden Park. Our friendly staff will assist. Kendra's Aluminum Products Limited, a tradition of excellence.
WEFM, the new fresh sound.
Activated Mornings on WEFM 99.9 is on now.
See, you miss your cue just now.
I wiggled my nose and I looked over. I don't know if you had removed I don't know. You didn't see it, but I held back. I resisted the urge. Good morning and welcome back to WEFM 99.9's Activated Mornings for today, the first day of the working week for this month. It's the first day in April for us.
For some of us.
For the 2nd of April. And of course, you're listening to Ari and yours truly, Christal. And in studio this morning, we've got Mr. Atiba Edwards. He's currently the president and CEO of the Brooklyn Children's Museum. And we're talking a lot of interesting things. We're live on Facebook and YouTube at WEFM99 SVG. And also you can reach out to us via WhatsApp at 457-9997. If you want to call and ask a question, drop a comment. Same number, 457-9997.
So outside of being the past COO and now CEO, the most important takeaway for a lot of us is that you are, in fact, a Vincentian. So tell us a little bit more about your Vincentian heritage.
Yeah, I was born in the hospital. You know, at the time, there was only one hospital in town. And
Kingston General.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. My mom was a nurse for a while there too. So my family is split between Stony Ground and Paul's Lot.
Okay.
So, you know, Edwards, Arthur, what was the next last name? Warren.
Because if you forget our last name, you know.
I know as soon as I started saying, I said, I shouldn't do this. I'm going to miss somebody, but I love them all. But yeah, so family was down here and my dad left, I think around 84, maybe, as a very, you know, sort of, I would say the traditional Caribbean American dream is to see the world, and there's New York. So he essentially was the scout, if you will. He went ahead, worked, bust his butt to get enough money to send back for my mom, my older brother, older sister, and I to come up and move to New York. So it was really important in many ways that I remember when my promotion got announced, so much love, because I was now another representation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in a way that just hasn't happened before. You know, we've had many successful people in main, you know, visual arts, performing arts, music, entertainment, celebrities. So that's some of the ones people see the most, but now they had this new crown to add to the jewel, if you will, the new jewel to add to the crown of the Caribbean and St. Vincent. So it's great. It reminds me all the time that there's a lot of people always, there are more people rooting and cheering here to support than you'll ever know.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll show up when they show up. But it's really been helpful.
So when did you leave St. Vincent? At what age?
I was a wee lad of 1 year old. So
You're 1 year, yeah,
I
one
flew
year
up on my
old.
mom's lap.
So I'm curious because you're embracing your Vincentian nationality.
Of course.
Have you ever felt conflicted growing up as an American?
No, not at all. Because even though my parents sacrificed and gave up a lot, everything they had here to move there and essentially restart. And when you're restarting as an immigrant, as a Black immigrant in it's probably the 80s and the 90s in New York, you're not even starting where you left. You're starting many, many steps back. So they had to leave a lot behind to get to where they are. But they made sure for a couple of weeks, a year, to still take us home. Growing up, we had what's it called, the Primer Nelson's, I think it was, that had like a series of red books that they used when they had a pair.
Yes.
And we still have them to this day. I think it was Nelson's Primer.
Yeah, I know Nelson is in there.
Yeah.
We used it in primary school.
So it was really important for my family to make sure we were connected to who we are. And I've never felt conflicted because every time anybody asks my bio, I'm a Rastafarian who was born in St. Vincent and I grew up in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And those are the three things that open up any sentence when I talk about myself.
Okay. Kieran, could you change my bio to Rastafarian? But it's always curious for me to ask these questions because usually as an immigrant we fall into the same career path, laborers or doctors or not, and everyone in here knows that growing up you either needed to be a doctor, a lawyer, or some sort of business person in order to be deemed as a successful person in a Caribbean household. And then when you go to the States, and as you say, you start a few steps back, you fall into carpentry, masonry, technicians, whether it's AC or some sort of mechanical technician. That's usually the career path. And then there's you, coming from that generation of the 80s, 90s, here in opposition. How do you feel about that? And you said earlier, representation matters. How do you feel American or Caribbean Americans growing up, or even Vincentians here, see you? How do you feel it? What do you think it means to them?
So I think representation's tricky because, I could only speak for myself. I didn't go through this journey to say that I'm really a representation. But once you reach a certain place, it is what it just happens, right? So I am now viewed as a representation of the island, which I'm happy and welcome, especially if I could get diplomatic status. So if you know anybody, but that aside, but I am serious. Knowing that there's a lot more people who are now looking at you, so there's these margins of error become now magnified, and it's something I have to carry with me at the end of the day, right? So the way I got to where I was is my parents, they said, look, do what you want to do. We trust you. We make your decision. We're here to support you. We've raised you right, but you're your own person. So, my older brother did he's a big principal in Brooklyn. My older sister's a nurse. My little brother teaches 8th grade special ed math. My little sister's a social worker. So for all things considered, my parents, they can relax. That's why they're down here on vacation. They know that they have, I would say, drew the lines of the lane for us. And then however we go through that path of life, as long as we don't forget we are a representation of the family. That's the one representation you come away from birth. Like, particularly with Caribbean families, somebody knows your family.
Oh, yeah.
So if you go out and you act foolish, it's going to come back to you. I remember I was coming back from a soccer game one time in Brooklyn. I think I stopped off in a Wendy's. Actually, I remember this to this day. And growing up, we don't eat meat, but I just was thirsty. Finished playing 2 games and practice, so I got a salad from Wendy's. When I say they don't make any sense, but I got a salad from Wendy's, and I get home, my little brother, my cousins, and probably within an hour, my dad's like, "You was in Wendy's?" I said, "What in all hell?" This is before the smartphone and all that stuff is out there. And I was like, "Yeah, I went to get a salad because I was hungry." But that's a sidebar of just the way representation has shown up. It starts with the family, and I think that plants the seed at an early age to say, look, you are a representation of your family, period. And now the family is extended, right? Now I'm a representation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is definitely my family, the people I know, the people I don't know. And even every time I come home, there's always a new cousin or uncle on somebody's side that I didn't meet. But we know we love it and we welcome it. And it's a chance for many people to then widen what they consider as a actual path for success, but a path for pursuit. And as they go along any search, let's say they are hoping to become the next president of an arts or cultural institution, along that way, they might find something else that they didn't know about. So I think I am able to sort of, bushwhack the field a little bit and then create a new lane for people to travel.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, representation and being a Vincentian, you said you're a Rastafarian. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Were you born into Rastafarianism, or is that something you were attracted to during your lifetime and then became one?
I was born into it. So my mom and my dad is both Rastas. They converted and dealt with the headache what that brings, particularly in an island community where they were, police would just snatch people off the street, shave their head and put them back out just because, it's viewed as a rebellious way. But I was born into it, raised that way. And I remember, I think it was probably sophomore year of high school, that when I was coming home, my parents said, look, this is something we raised you, but at the end of the day, it's on you to continue it. We encourage exploration. That's kind of been the through line of my family. Like, we want you to know about who you are and what you say. So if you want to continue as a Rasta, go ahead. And for me, I was like, oh, great. So I started learning more, reading more. And it's now something that, particularly with, the recent Bob Marley movement, Bob Marley in general, like more people are aware to and interested in. But for me, I was born into it. And it's something that, like I said, it's one of the key identifiers, both physically, because when people see me, they see the hair, they see the beard. But when they ask me about me, that's the opening line, because it's a very inclusive, warm way of life and way of living. It's really not, it's not one caught up in choice and judgment of people. It's really focused on the only people who are the evil ones, or anybody who oppresses mankind, period. Whoever you are, however you identify, that's on you. But once you oppress mankind, that's when problems start. And it's a really calm way of life. I think that's really been instrumental in how I've moved through life. I am very humble, and some people might say nonchalant, but I just like to say I just move through life trying to make every day better than yesterday.
I can't help but asking, so how do you feel as a Rastafarian and as someone returning back to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, knowing about some of the rules that are instituted in some of these schools? Well, Rastafarians, they do get a pass once you could prove from your church or the various organizations that you are in fact being raised as a Rastafarian or you've converted. They allow you to have the hair. But for those who just want to convert to the hairstyle at least, and are not allowed to because of this 2-inch rules in a lot of these schools, how do you feel about that?
I think is antiquated in many ways. It's something where it's a control type of aspect where if you are Black and looking to grow your hair, you're held to different rules than if you are not. So it's very, once you write that down on paper, it's segregation at its fullest, right? We are judging you slightly different than others because of how your skin looks. So it's unfortunate we still have that. It's slowly changing, but we're talking 2024, and this is, Rasta started back in 1920 and 1930. So almost 100 years of this way of life and people embracing it. Some people growing their hair just because they want to grow their hair, but you see a person.
I don't see it as a job.
Thank you.
I don't see it as a job.
Thank you.
He even said that his parents raised him in a manner, so they raised him to be Rastafarian. And at the end of that journey, I know.
Somebody's not getting a juicy today. I tell you that.
Yeah.
Somebody's not getting a juicy.
I'm pointing fingers.
And it's not one of us talking right now. I'll tell you that. Red and orange.
But it's rather interesting, like your parenting, but let me write it down so I wouldn't forget it.
Mhm.
One thing, and I'll get back to it. Let's
But
continue.
yeah,
with
so I
the-
think it's unfortunate we still have these things that we're focused on such in some ways nonsense, right?
Mhm.
If somebody shows up with a certain style of hair, the first question is what skin color are there, and one gets a pass, one doesn't. We're taken away from learning. That's
Yeah.
the reason all these schools, girls, boys, you name it, it exists as a place of learning, but also a place with some rules, right? That's why we make a decision to go there. But I think the rules that we are holding on to need to change for the better so that we can focus on the real core of it all. And it's, presentation for people. Sometimes it's a bit silly.
Yeah. Hey, Christal.
Yeah. I mean, there was a story a couple of years ago about Roman Catholic and a young lady, a student, who merely wanted to. When you talk about representation, her mother had locks, and she wanted to emulate that. And for a time, she wasn't allowed to. I think the situation rectified after a while, but it garnered a lot of media attention. Lawyers got involved, everybody pretty much got involved, and it was talked about on radio stations during that period. And like for that to be happening it wasn't 2024, but maybe like 2022, I can't remember the exact year. It was really striking to me. I think there was another Caribbean island that made changes to their school rules as well to include and be a bit more inclusive. I see some schools would have like Afro Day, and like, oh boy, it's just fascinating that slavery was abolished, quote unquote, so long ago, but still we have to delegate a day for these things. I feel like we're so far gone from that, but I digress. You talk about parenting a lot and the influence of your parents, and what it's reminding me of, like when we have conversations, how different it is sometimes, some of the social issues that we encounter because of lack of proper parenting. But it seems like you grew up in a very open-minded family that communicated a lot. Can you tell us about that?
We communicated how we best communicated, and I say that because it looks and feels different for others. Like I've had people spend time in the house with me sometimes, like a Sunday dinner, and like, some of us are really quiet, some are really outgoing. Like I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters, my 2 parents, so 7 of us in the house, and each child can't be more different than the next. And in a way that, the same parents, same household in Brownsville raised most of us, and we're all very different. So parenting for me, it was really important to highlight the community that we have and celebrate the community. So when we moved when we moved up to New York and Brownsville, lived in a 4-apartment house with my dad's brother. So in one apartment, there was probably 3 or 4 of us. A next apartment, up to 3 or 4, another apartment, 3 at the time, and then us was 4 at the time. So in that one building, we don't even have to go outside. We can knock on each other's door, and there's 16 kids playing. And then there's 16 kids who are roster playing on the street. So like this level of love and support was rooted in me at an early age. And when it came to the household, we had a couple key things at the time growing up: home before the streetlights. So 6, 7 o'clock, make sure you're in the house. Sunday morning, Sunday night was family dinner. Don't care what you're doing. Those are the 2 things that always happen. Friday, Saturday, my parents didn't cook. It was sort of fend for yourself day. And that taught us how to cook at an early age and figure out who was good at what. And then bringing in the New Year's, walking out the old year. So New Year's Eve from 11:45 till 12:05, you have to be in the house. So they had a couple of very key fixed points. But after that, it was go out, don't do harm to anybody, don't bring harm to yourself or the name. And they allowed us to really just try and do a lot. I mean, they grew up in a way that, to digress, parents are very interesting with children, right? Because once I'm born, that life before, they're completely strangers to me. I have no idea what life was like for them. We talk a little bit for sure. So each child that came along, I got to see, from my younger brother and my younger sister, I got to see something slightly different because they now expanded their parenting to include 4, now 5 kids. So it was this aspect of how do you continue to evolve and raise your children in a society that constantly changes. And again, I know my parents sacrificed a lot to get where we are today, but also to lay the foundation of where we got to be in, the 80s, 83, 84. So talking about 70s, 60s, 70s, they're growing up here, going through, like you said, it was still antiquated. I can't imagine what it was 60, 70 years ago. Growing up in the 90s in New York, everything you see on some of those old shows was right. It was rough. It was very rough from an external standpoint, but growing up in that community, it was always love. Like we would get out on the street, play, and then the block that we grew up on, Ralph, half of the block, we all knew each other. So there's this aspect where the adults allow the children to be children and not force them to grow up in any which way, but also the children, we learned respect at a very early age, and we learned what it wasn't. And we knew how most importantly, you always respect everybody, period. You treat everybody with love. You treat everybody with kindness. You share. So we all was always giving to each other. And then as that community grew by bringing in others from outside who will come and hang out, but also as we went to other communities, that love of supporting each other was started and placed foundationally at home. So we have these moments of celebration. It takes us back to those days. It takes us back to the root essence of just care for each other. It's like this. It costs you nothing to love anybody. It also costs you nothing to hate. So you have a decision to make at the end of the day.
It's interesting. What do you think from your experience growing up? What do you think has influenced that sort of bond and love and community? Would you think Rastafarianism, Vincentian culture, maybe a bit of both?
I think a bit of both. So to talk a bit more about the Vincentian or really Caribbean, when you move up to Brooklyn, for most people who move up from the islands, you move to a community that's already established. So somebody is either telling you, hey, let's live on this street. I have a house. I have somebody's looking out for you. So like you're usually coming up with a somewhat set plan. Like my dad came up here, again, bust his butt for us, but he came up with a set plan because somebody else was like, all right, you're going to stay by me for a couple, get yourself set, then you get your own place. So that way of loving each other was really a key essence of Vincentian life. But really, when you think about the Caribbean, when you come to New York, all right, that's where a lot of the Haitians are. That's where the Jamaicans, the Trinis, the Vincies, the Bajans, they have these enclaves because we moved to a place where we see ourselves in some way, but also where we feel most welcome. And if I'm moving to the States, again, my dad moved to a place where, he was with his brothers and it's all Vincy, Tunk and everybody else. Like they grew up down here and then they moved up there. And I think Rasta layered onto it, amplifies that in a way that if you grow up with it and the way of life, you get it. I think the recent movie One Love with Bob Marley kind of highlights that a little bit, but really if you just expand on his music, I think his music captures it. It's always about love, community, appreciation. So I would say both Vincentian and Rastafarian are the things that really instilled the beauty and the benefit of community, but also cultivating that community. There's a great saying from a old quote unquote scholar called Voltaire, where he says like we must cultivate our own garden. And it's really important for us to take care of ourselves personally, because then we can take care of others, or to say it differently is the oxygen mask, right? The oxygen mask dropped down on a plane. I want to help my sister. I definitely want to put it on her first, but I know I need to put mine on so I can make her stronger as well.
Okay. Could you remind the listeners what your academic qualifications are?
Yep. I have a bachelor's in engineering and a bachelor's in liberal arts. So my engineering is industrial and operations engineering, which is a mix of financial engineering. So I did investment banking, which is a whole other fun part as a Rasta doing that. But I did investment banking and then poetry and musicology through the liberal arts degree as well. Okay.
And how do you apply these in the day-to-day operations of the Children's Museum?
Yeah. So for me, engineering, I say everybody's an engineer, everybody's an artist, and I don't really consider the two differently, but for some people mentally, that's how they see them, because engineering is quite simply making something inefficient become efficient, or maximizing something for a desired goal. And I think we wake up every day with that somewhat approach. And that shows up in the museum, both from the way I handle setting the foundations for finances so my team can then run the building, but also doing budgeting, modeling, grant writing, etc. with some of the team. and then thinking about systems and structures, because that's engineering at its heart. Like, what are the systems we have in place so that you're not really thinking about what you're supposed to do? You know what you're supposed to do, but you just want to think about how I can make it better. And then with poetry and musicology, it's creativity. You know, for me, I'm part of a great team at the museum, and everything we do is really focused on making it that much better, making it that much, improving the beauty of the thing, really giving a chance to allow creativity to flourish. So by encouraging that, encouraging exploration, encouraging mistake making, encouraging just risk taking, engineering and the creative arts, to summarize the other 2 degrees, that's how those 2 things show up for me.
So I see that you have a Holly Festival coming up this Saturday for the children. Do you think that being that Brooklyn is a melting pot of cultures, it helped you in some way to embrace and be able to teach and showcase some of these cultures of different children of different ethnicities?
Yeah, so that summarizes our museum in a nutshell. Our goal is to celebrate the diversity of Brooklyn and in turn the rest of the world by allowing for families, particularly children and families who identify with cultures, to see themselves amplified and uplifted. And if you don't, you have a chance to learn informally. And we really highlight informally because that's when, to me, true learning happens. It's not sitting in a classroom and, you know, learning for 35, 45 minutes before the bell. It's like, no, let me sit, play, learn amongst somebody else in a way that sticks with me. So to answer your question, yeah, I think it's very vital to change even some of the antiquated ways of our earlier conversation around here. We just need to understand we're really not that different. And for kids, they highlight that the best. Like, you can put 5 kids who look, and every which way you want to call them, different in a space, you'll see how quickly they'll start playing with each other and having fun and talking. And they don't even worry about a name. It's not, oh, what's your name, where you work? It's like, hey, I'm going grocery shopping. You could be the cashier for today. You do the same thing with adults. We stare at each other for a while till somebody's like, oh, it's a nice day outside, right? As soon as you open up with the weather, you know the conversation is going bad. And then we spend so much time learning about what we do transactionally versus who we are as a person. So I think that is why I really enjoy the work we do at the museum. It highlights who we are and cultures of the world. And then after, you'll figure out all the other, you know, transactions type, like sort of resume back of the baseball card stats. But for now, we're just here having fun.
Yeah. But you're here for a limited amount of time. But do you see yourself visiting like the Ministry of Education or different schools to impart the knowledge, because you have a wealth of it, given your experience and qualifications? So you see yourself doing that?
I would like to. I know my cousin Fern Dopwell is trying to make a lot of connections for me. So I welcome any and all opportunities to speak with literally anyone, because it's a two-way street of learning. I have something to share, but I have also something to learn, and vice versa. So I would like to speak with anybody who has some time, can make some time for me before I head out next week.
All right, so anybody listening, make some time. Christal.
Yeah. Time is flying. I didn't realize we only have 5 more minutes. You mentioned something that you did some work in finance, but when you just talked about it, you said finance Rastafarian. Why was that a fun experience?
The system?
Yeah, so I was I did investment banking, and I remember I did investment banking at JP Morgan, and I covered the automotive industry, doing fixed income research. So analyzing the economy and the car manufacturers and parts for GM and the parts manufacturers, and writing research. Should you buy, should you sell their debt? So they issue bonds. And I think it was probably the third week, it was mid-October. I went down to visit a trader. So their sales, trading, research are sort of the 3 arms of the research side of banking. And at first, he thought I was there to fix his computer. And I was like, oh, no, my name's Atiba. He's like, oh, you know, a lot of curse words. I don't know if we can, so I'll spare the air. I figured that, you know what I'm saying? A lot of curse words later in terms of his apology. He was very, very sorry. And I realized why, because there was another gentleman at the JP Morgan at bank who looked passingly like me, dark skin dreads, who worked in our IT department, because he eventually him and I crossed paths and like, oh, you're do like the little Spider-Man, oh, you're you. So it meant a lot, because him and I became really great friends. You know, he was from Eastern Europe, So I had a chance to learn a bit more from him. He had a chance to learn from me, and we would sit and have these really long conversations, which kind of, to the question you asked earlier, we just talked about who we are, not what we're doing in this world. And it was something that really stuck with me to this day. We all make mistakes. It's really, how do we learn from that? Him and I could have had a falling out. I could have never talked to him again and ruined a relationship. Or I could say, hey, there is a, some percentage where ignorance is unfortunate. But when you have that ignorance, you realize it, and then you move toward the opportunity to learn. That's really where we strive and succeed. So it was a great opportunity, something I love. My first boss to this day is still my mentor, is still a friend. His daughter went to University of Michigan like I did. And it was a really great opportunity. Something I'll do again in a heartbeat. There's some high moments of it, there's some low moments of it. But I spent 5 years doing that work and more. And I think it really played a pivotal role in who I am today and what I'm able to do, because when they see a resume and they see JP Morgan on there, like, it's easier to get into the door. I'm very cognizant of how I look when I show up in some places, especially if I don't have on my suit. It's harder to have some conversations, and then when I show up dressed a certain way, it's a lot easier. If they see a piece of paper, JP Morgan, yeah, let's bring him in. So to that saying, like, school-based, unfortunately, we still have it stuck in those ways. It's an unfortunate continuation that still exists to this day and age. It's like we haven't moved on fully in a way that allows real success to take place and make the world a better place.
That is something I could personally relate to. I remember one time I was vacationing in New York, and Vincentian asked me, what do you do? And I said, I'm a journalist. How do you tell I'm being a journalist with locks?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what?
Shouldn't tell. Well, I'm gonna write the stories with the dip it in some ink.
Yeah, dip it in some ink. And, sometimes I use it to hold up the camera,
Yeah.
String it up. Yeah.
The answers come from here.
But yeah, that's unfortunately the way of thinking that we still have.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, so.
Yeah.
We're our own worst enemies often.
Yeah. But it's 8:59 and we have to bring this segment to a close. Is there anything you'd like to leave with the listeners?
Thank you all for having me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for celebrating me. More people than I'll ever know. But you can find me wherever you can find me. And I'm always happy to talk. But I really am proud to be of this island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And like I said, it's a key part of who I am. And it's really shaped my life. They joke around small island, but we're really a loving group of people. And it's something that set the stage for me and my family. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to continue setting the stage for others and really taking the door off the hinges. So it's not really a gatekeeping. I just want everybody to walk in after.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. And the brewery is located just down the road. I know you wanted to get that last drink. I'm pretty sure.
I know. I'm leaving
you could buy it by the case.
I have 2 cases of fruit cocktail at home. So
yeah, but this was a really nice conversation. I do look forward to having you in St. Vincent once again. So all the best in your endeavors, and I do hope that someone from the ministries reach out to you before you leave next week.
His cousin is also doing all the work too. So big up to the cousin and everybody who's playing an important part. Shout out to Mr. Macmillan. He was the one who actually reached out to me and connected me to. Was it your cousin?
I think so, yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us as well.
Thank you all. Have a great day and week ahead.
All the best. Thanks.